Nowhere on earth is a land more sacred than this small area in the eastern end of the Mediterranean. For this is not just a landscape. Its mountains, rivers, and towns are immortalized in scriptures and uttered in prayers. For many, this is the place where God entered a relationship with the human race. And of the major faiths to come from this region, the biggest, forming about a third of the whole planet's population, is Christianity. In this adventure, we trace the path that Jesus of Nazareth walked to discover a land that for generations continues to fuel the faith of many. I continue to explore Israel, the land of promise. At its heart is Jerusalem, the ancient holy city where Jesus' final days took place. A fortified city with 8 gates leading inside. A curious sight, in its eastern side is a 9th gate, permanently closed off.
In the Bible, it says that the Messiah would come riding on a donkey from the east, from the Mount of Olives, which is where we are now.
This is the east, the sun is here.
In order to prevent him from coming, the Muslims who ruled here and built the wall, they blocked up this gate so he would not come.
But it was the same gate where centuries before it was closed, Jesus triumphantly entered Jerusalem on a donkey, with people welcoming him with palm leaves and shouts of praise, only to be put to death in this very city a few days later. Who is Jesus of Nazareth, who went from being a carpenter to charismatic preacher to having over 2 billion disciples all over the world? For Christians, the Holy Land brings the scriptures to life, as most places mentioned in the Bible are actual places you can still visit. I started the beginning as my journey took me to Nazareth. Imagining myself back in time, I felt like I was walking in the streets of this small town where a young woman named Mary lived. Daily life in a small town then would be attending to some chores around the house. But imagine her surprise when an angel of the Lord announced her extraordinary destiny, that she was to be the mother of the promised Savior. Today, the site is marked by the Church of the Annunciation, the largest in the Middle East. Murals from different nations depict this pivotal event in Christian history. The story gets complicated as Mary is engaged to a man named Joseph, a carpenter. Not wanting to shame her, he decided to end the engagement quietly. But an angel also visited him to assure him of the child's part in God's plan. It is important to understand Israel's political climate at the time of Jesus' birth. The Promised Land was a constant battlefield, and this time was under the hands of the powerful Roman Empire. They ran a strict taxation policy and would demand that citizens be registered to keep track of their dues. For this reason, Joseph had to go back to his hometown Bethlehem to fulfill the census, taking Mary with him, who was now heavy with child. And she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloth and placed him in a manger, for there was no room for them at the inn. Today, the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem is said to stand over the site of the manger where Jesus was born. 4 different Christian traditions administer the church together, one of which is the Armenian Church.
We're in the Church of the Nativity, and on the right is where the manger is.
The Armenians are one of the most ancient Christian communities, the first country to make Christianity their national religion in the 4th century. A 14-pointed silver star beneath the altar marks the exact spot where Jesus was born. At the foothills nearby, shepherds tended to their flock, keeping close watch over them. Then, an angel of the Lord appeared to them, saying, "Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you."
This is the shepherd's field. It was actually here where the angels came to wake up the shepherds to let them know that Jesus was born.
Pilgrims flocked to the church and monastery found on the site in honor of the shepherds who were one of the first to receive the news of Jesus' coming. Up next, we travel across the harsh Judean desert to the fertile lands of Galilee as Jesus begins his ministry, performing miracles along the way. By the time Jesus was 30 years old, there was a growing dissent among the Jews for the Romans' iron-fisted rule. Riots were bloody. Offenders were crucified. The Jewish people continued to hope for their Messiah. Under these circumstances, voices of hope sprung from the wilderness. The River Jordan, running from the north to the south of Israel, was a very important water source. But people flocked to its banks for another life-giving source. John the Baptist offered new hope for the despairing Jews. As Jesus prepared to begin his ministry, he also sought to be baptized on these waters. Today, different sites along the Jordan allow Christians to do the same. After receiving his heavenly mandate, Jesus went to the desert to fast for 40 days and 40 nights. Here in the ancient town of Jericho, we find the mountain where Jesus was said to have faced the devil's temptations to abandon his earthly mission. But Jesus held fast and proved himself ready to begin his ministry. I, on the other hand, seemed to have lost my way and found myself facing other forms of temptation. The River Jordan continues to flow and empties itself out into a remarkable body of water.
The Dead Sea is the lowest point on Earth. It is 1,400 feet below sea level.
Aside from its low elevation, it's also 10 times as salty as the Earth's oceans, making it impossible for marine life to survive here. But it is rich in minerals that even the Egyptians collected mud here, which they used for mummification. Of course, I had to see if the Dead Sea can still carry my weight and keep me afloat. And it does. Who knew that this hyper-saline lake can also perform miracles? In stark contrast to the Dead Sea is the Sea of Galilee. Along its shores, we find the ancient town of Capernaum.
As Jesus traveled from his hometown Nazareth, he settled here in Capernaum and started his ministry.
The remnants of a 4th century synagogue can be found here, as well as the ruins of a house that stood during the time of Jesus. It is claimed to be the house of Peter himself, one of the first apostles. As he walked along the shores, he saw Simon, whom he called Peter, and his brother Andrew, who were casting nets. At the time of Jesus, the freshwater lake had a thriving fishing industry.
Here in the Sea of Galilee, Jesus finds his first disciples, and he promised to teach them to be fishers of men.
Boats played a large role in Jesus' life and ministry, and are mentioned about 50 times in the Gospels. So imagine everyone's excitement as archaeologists unearthed an ancient boat which existed during the time of Jesus. Made of cedar planks and ancient nails, it had a flat bottom, which allowed it to get very close to the shore while fishing. Today, one can still enjoy a boat ride across the calm lake. Just don't go overboard and try to walk on the water. Jesus went from town to town to preach. He taught lessons that were easy for people to understand, relating them to their daily lives. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will not hunger, and he who believes in me will never thirst. And people listened because his words were always filled with hope.
It was on this spot that in front of thousands, Jesus gave his most important teachings, the Sermon on the Mount.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are those who are merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. The Beatitudes are the words of hope that people needed to hear at that time, and still ring true until today. The northern part of Israel is a rich agricultural area today as it was 2,000 years ago.
We're in one of the highest points here in Golan Heights. If you look further, that would be Syria already. And if you look to that side, that should be Lebanon.
Wine was an integral part of life. Some areas still have traces of ancient wine presses. I visit the Golan Heights Winery, Israel's third largest wine producer. I was met by Reuben, who took me through the lush vineyard.
Reuben, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine.
Yeah.
So you have a very long history of making wine. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yes, the history is very long. It's not just 2,000 years ago. King David, one of the first kings here in Israel, as mentioned, they had even a staff to treat the vineyards and the wine in this wine cellar.
The weather here is a little bit cooler.
That comes actually from the elevation here. And from this we can make very good grapes to make outstanding wines, special wines. That's actually the connection between the climate, the elevation we have here, and the soil. The soil is very important. We have some old volcanoes here around.
And like most Israeli companies, the vineyard makes good use of technology to ensure the quality of their products.
And you say you have meteorological
stations
around the area,
Yes.
continuously studying what is
So
best
we do
conditions.
use here in the Golan Heights 13 meteorological stations. And from those meteorological stations, the data of those stations, they go straight to the computer, and the computer is connected to
Irrigation.
the irrigation system.
wow,
Yes.
very complicated.
It's very complicated, and we do it by satellites. We take pictures from each vineyard.
As in Jewish tradition, the wines are kosher, which means they conform to religious and dietary laws. The winemaking process must be handled by Sabbath-observant Jews and overseen by a rabbi.
This is one of our wines. I think that's even one of the most awarded wines here from the winery. We sent the wine to international wine competitions. This was in 2013. 2013 was an outstanding year. Look at the color. It's very dark. Please take the glass. It smells like cherries, black cherries.
It's good.
Yeah. Black forest berries, maybe. Just to explain the wine, very good.
Very good.
Now let's taste wine. We actually here in Israel, we say in Hebrew,
Yes.
Lechaim.
Lechaim.
Lechaim means to life.
Live.
Lechaim. Cheers.
Lechaim.
Cheers.
Up next, we continue to walk where Jesus walked on the final days of his earthly life. As Jesus went on with his ministry, he would also travel to Jerusalem to observe Jewish holidays. He continued to preach and heal the sick within the city walls.
These are the pools of Bethesda, where Jesus performed a miracle, healing a man who has been sick for 38 years.
His act of kindness towards this man angered the temple priests, for it was done during the Sabbath, when no work, not even miracles, should be performed. And so Jesus was watched closely by the religious elders, as more people looked up to him as the Messiah. After celebrating the Passover feast with his disciples, Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." Gethsemane in Hebrew means an olive oil press. Israel has a long tradition of producing olive oil, used for anointing priests and for lighting the temple. Here at the Golan Heights, olive plantations cover the landscape. I met with Avner Talman, an olive grower who tells me why he decided to get into this business.
You were saying this view was the one that got you started to move here altogether.
I came over here. Apparently, this house, which I didn't know it in the beginning, came with 25 acres of agricultural land. Not to build on, but you can plant. And I said, you know what, the olive tree is smarter than the one who plants it.
But it's a very important agricultural plant here in Israel, even from the very beginning of history.
That's right, because olive tree can take bad maintenance, bad treatment, bad everything. It survives itself. It's drought resistant. It doesn't need water. It can survive. It produces olives, which is actually food and drugs, cure, everything is inside it. So you see the olive tree, there's a reason it lives so long.
He takes me to the olive orchards, where he makes sure that they are grown in an organic and sustainable way. But aside from producing extra virgin olive oil, Avner describes how he discovered a use for the water residue left after extracting oil.
The machine has a big hose for the residue.
Right.
That is called husk.
Yes.
It's flowing outside, and it's kind of quantity. And the pipe broke. So I went there and tried to fix it. When I tried to fix it, it broke totally. So it started to spill on me, and I fell underneath. So I was kind of covered with the material.
Yeah.
And then my guys pulled me out of there, and they took water and washed me. I suddenly see that my skin is good, is even better. I mean, immediately. I mean, the touch is kind of silky. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So I understood that there's something in it.
This small accident led to a lucrative global business. Perfecting their formulas in their labs, Olea Essence now has a wide range of organic skincare and household products. It is indeed a business that can thrive for generations, as olive trees have a very long lifespan. Some even claim that these found in the Garden of Gethsemane have existed for 1,000 years. Could Jesus have agonized in prayer under these very same trees? On the same night, they found Jesus here and they arrested him. This led to a series of events that changed the course of human history forever. What would it have felt like to be there and to watch these events unfold? Pilgrims continue to trace these narrow alleys, trying to hear the echo of footsteps in the cobblestones. The Via Dolorosa, or the Way of Suffering, traces the steps Jesus took as he is led to his death, commemorated by 14 stations.
This is the first station of the cross. This is where Pontius Pilate condemned Jesus. Today, it is already an all-boys Muslim school.
Jesus was made to drag the instrument of his execution through these narrow streets.
At this point, Simon of Cyrene helped Jesus carry the cross, and he was leaning right at this stone to rest and catch his breath.
Each agony, each fall is etched in memory. Pilgrims imagine the physical and spiritual strain of bearing the cross, the sins of the world, on Jesus' shoulders. Finally, he reaches the place of his execution. In Christian tradition, the site of Jesus' crucifixion and burial is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I met the man they call the Keeper of the Keys. He is Muslim, but holds the keys to Christendom's holiest shrine.
This is three churches, three main churches, under the control of the Greek, Catholic, Armenian,
Yeah.
under the shoulder of the Armenian, Coptic, and Assyrian. So we have 5 churches. Every day we open at 5 and we close at 9 in the evening.
Since the 12th century, a Muslim family holds the key to maintain the peace among the Christian churches found on the site.
My Nusebi family is our family is responsible to open and close the church every morning.
What age did you start?
I started around 25 years old. Now I am 67 years.
And do you give it to your eldest son?
It's like a kingdom. It goes from
The
father
eldest.
to son. If not, the brother, cousins, and so on.
And thank you very much. It is appreciated by the whole Catholic community, by all the communities for you to open this door to everyone.
We are here to helping to be neutral between all the Christians, so you are welcome and
Thank
we
you.
hope you good visit and God give help for everybody.
Thank you very
sir.
much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Inside, the last 5 stations of the cross can be found, leading to one of the holiest places in Christian tradition. Beneath the altar is a hole said to be the place where the cross was raised. Crucifixion is the most shameful, most brutal sentence reserved only for the gravest of crimes in Roman law. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Jesus uttered as he hung on the cross, fulfilling the ultimate sacrifice for mankind. As Jesus breathed his last, the skies darkened, a storm raged, and the earth shook. Here, they say the rock of Calvary's cracks are evidence of these events. As Jesus' body was taken down from the cross, a rich man, Joseph of Arimathea, claimed Jesus' body to be put in a proper tomb. This stone is believed to be the spot where Jesus' body was prepared for burial. Within the church is the edicule, said to house the tomb of Jesus himself. Owing to the great significance of the events that took place 3 days after Jesus was buried, scholars tried to find the spot where this happened.
Outside the walls of Jerusalem, they found this garden tomb, which is what Jesus' tomb would have looked like at that time.
It was dawn of the 3rd day, and some of the women went to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body. What they found took them by surprise. The stone had been rolled away. The body could not be found. An angel said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen." It was through these events that the Christian faith is hinged, to be later on spread all over the world through expeditions, through conquest. And so the story of Jesus is one of the most well-known in the world. And for all its familiarity, it may indeed be the greatest story ever told. Israel today is considered sacred ground not only for the people who live in it, but also for the rest of the world who share in the many ideologies that have sprung up from this place. This land is where faith is made tangible, where scriptures come alive. Keeping the peace among these faiths is therefore everyone's responsibility.
This has been your captain, Joy Roa. See you in the next
Asian Air Safari!